Hello and welcome to Eldritch Girl and the very first of our bonus episodes. For these episodes I thought it would be good, since we're doing 100 horror movies in 92 days for the main series this time, to do bonus episodes that look back on my media highlights that I've been posting on my blog and just shouting out books that I've really enjoyed, whether they're horror or not, and different genres of things, as it's going to get very samey with just horror in the main season. So yeah, I thought this would be a good opportunity to just boost a load of other people's work and give you ideas of what to read, what to watch, apart from horror, what to listen to. I'm going to shout out some podcasts that I've been enjoying, audio dramas, all that kind of thing, so you get a sense of how eclectic my taste is and that it's not all about horror. However, we're going to start off with something that I posted in November 2025, which was the first time that I started doing my media roundups for the month. And I am never beating the allegations because both of the books that I enjoyed were gothic, but they were also very fun. So I only read two books back in November. That was All of Us Murderers by KJ Charles, which is a queer gothic horror novel, and What the Fog Conceals by R.A. Marno, which was an ARC read. That one is out in August, and that is a Northern Irish Gothic. Absolutely loved both of them. They're both very different. All of Us Murderers is a lush gothic drama of Crimson Peak meets the murderous intrigue of Knives Out, with an LGBTQ love story to die for from award-winning author KJ Charles. It came out in October 2025 with Poisoned Pen Press. Who will survive Lackaday House? When Zeb Wickham is summoned to a wealthy relative's remote Gothic manor, he is horrified to find all the people he least wants to see in the world. His estranged brother, his sneering cousin, his bitter ex-lover Gideon Grey. Things couldn't possibly get worse. Then the master of the house announces the true purpose of the gathering. He intends to leave the vast family fortune to whoever marries his young ward, setting off a violent scramble for her hand. Zeb wants no part of his greedy family, but when he tries to leave, the way is barred. The walls of Lackaday House are high and the gates firmly locked. As the Dartmoor mists roll in, there is no way out, and something unnatural may be watching them from the house's shadowy depths. Fear and paranoia ramping ever higher, Zeb has nowhere to turn but to the man who once held his heart. Da, da, da. As the gaslight flickers and terror takes hold, can two warring lovers reunite, uncover the murderous mysteries of Lackaday House, and live to tell the tale? I really enjoyed this. Zeb, the main character, has ADHD. Obviously it's not called that because it's set in Victorian times, but it's very obvious on page that that is what he has. I really liked the gay romance part. I really enjoyed all of the references to multiple Gothic horror novels from the 18th and 19th centuries. There are so many different plot points that are referenced, and fiction novels and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Just really recommend that one. The second book was What the Fog Conceals by R.A. Marno. That comes out the 15th of August 2026, so this year, with Salt Publishing. And I was actually asked to blurb this, and I did so very joyfully. And my blurb was, the quote that's being used for that is, "This debut is not only a wonderful addition to Northern Irish Gothic fiction, but a must-read for all those who love slow-burn Gothic horror." And I do stand by that. I think it's very powerful. There are parts of it that made me cry. It's based on a real incident in Northern Irish history. R.A. Marno is himself from Northern Ireland. It's incredibly moving, and it's about what happens when something heinous occurs as a historical event, and everybody is kind of coerced into forgetting it, but also people want to forget it and are complicit in forgetting it and making sure that it's forgotten. And the land remembers, and things start to resurface because the land remembers what has happened and is forcing that memory back, and people have to confront it. and it's just very powerful. It's very, I guess, literary Gothic, if we want to use that phrase. I don't particularly like it, but I think that it's something that people would understand if I said literary Gothic. It's very I mean, it's not sort of real world kind of thing. It's a very kind of dreamlike in places. It's very kind of abstract, I guess, but it's very, like, there's a narrative, there are character arcs. I think you'd have to read it to kind of get into it, but you have to be prepared for it to be quite slow and just very immersive, very atmospheric. Um, okay, so this is the blurb. In What the Fog Conceals, R.A. Marno delivers a taut, quietly devastating debut that lingers in the mind long after the final page. Set in a remote Irish estate shadowed by silence and omission, the novel unearths the emotional archaeology of a family haunted less by ghosts than by what they refuse to name. Blending literary precision with Gothic unease, Marno explores the weight of memory, the corrosive nature of secrecy, and the quiet violence of complicity. This is a story where atmosphere presses in like weather, where grief hides in architecture, and where the past is never quite buried, only waiting to return. Perfect for readers drawn to elegant psychological fiction and the slow unravel of long-held truths, What the Fog Conceals marks the arrival of a striking new voice. Yeah, I genuinely thought that it was brilliant, and in What the Fog Conceals, R.A. Marno creates a deeply moving and quietly assured narrative of unstoppable resurfacing memory, the unexorcisable haunting of history, and the ultimate unsuppressible power of a landscape, which is a heritage both natural and constructed, that is inescapable as mortality. And again, this is where the quote from my blurb came from. This debut is not only a wonderful addition to Northern Irish Gothic fiction, but a must-read for all those who love slow burn Gothic horror. Yeah, I would definitely recommend that. In November, I also watched a bit of TV and film. I was ill for most of November, so I was basically just on the sofa not doing anything. But some of the shows that I loved were Hazbin Hotel. That's not a surprise to anyone, I guess. Helluva Boss, of course, set in the same universe, which I watched the entirety of straight after, back to back. Yaratilan, or Creature, 2023 version of Frankenstein, which is a Turkish version of Frankenstein. That's on Netflix. I love those. The Creature is amazing. I genuinely recommend it. And they're very much comfort shows for me. I really enjoy them. I also watched K-pop Demon Hunters, apparently, in November and really liked it. Again, not a surprise, really. I love musicals. The songs are really catchy. I was just sat there crying my eyes out through the whole thing. Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. I loved that one. I actually wrote a post comparing the way Del Toro adapted the novel to the way Can Irmak adapted it for his 8-part series, Creature. And you can read that on my blog, cmrosens.com. And I followed up the feature film with the behind-the-scenes documentary, which is Frankenstein, the Anatomy Lesson. And I just found that really interesting because it goes into detail of the sets and the colours and introduces you to the different people who were part of the crew, and all of their different parts that they had to play in making that film. And I found that really enriched my experience. I also watched a film called Baramulla, which is set in Kashmir and focuses on the struggles in Kashmir with supernatural forces and a crime thriller plot. I found that really interesting because I've seen a lot of films where I don't know enough to kind of comment on it. Yeah, it's just one of those films where, like, if you don't know the geopolitical divides and the religious conflicts of the region, it's like, oh, okay, I can see. That's very interesting that you're framing it that way, and that's very interesting that this film presents this in this particular way, and perhaps in a way that you don't often see it portrayed. So I've seen shows from India like Ghoul, where it explores kind of the Muslim minority, what might happen if when Muslims are oppressed in a particular way. And Baramulla is more like, okay, this is what happens when Hindus are oppressed by Muslims, and the kind of dark history of this region, and also there is a supernatural entity that is taking children, but the children's kidnap is being blamed on Muslim extremists. And the Muslim extremists do exist and are there and are causing issues in the area, but it's not them that is doing the thing. And then you have kind of this supernatural history of the area, and yeah, very interesting. So yeah, those are my November watches and my November recommendations. The next one I did was in December. In December I read a little bit more, to my surprise. And the books that really stood out for me was Linghun by Ai Jiang, a modern Chinese-Canadian Gothic ghost story, which is also described as literary horror. It's a beautiful, very serious, very rich, multi-layered grief horror. And the blurb is, welcome home, follow Wen-Chi, Liam and Mrs. in this modern Gothic ghost story by Chinese-Canadian writer and immigrant Ai Jiang. Linghun is set in the mysterious town of Home, a place where the dead live again as spirits, conjured by the grief-sick population that refuses to let go. So the premise is like, what if you could move into a house and in this area where if you have a dead loved one, you can communicate with them again, and it's only in this specific place that you can do that, and everybody is trying to move into these houses in order to communicate with their dead child or lover or whatever. And it's this very, very, very messed up, abusive situation to those who are still alive, especially the children that are still alive in a family who are forced into this situation. I really enjoyed it. I think for a given value of enjoyment, like, it was really good. I wrote a longer review for Divination Hollow and just recommending it. It also reminded me very much of the film Home for Rent, which is a Thai film about like bringing child spirits back and grief and multi-POV chapter type structure for the film. So I would recommend that alongside this book. But yeah, so Linghun. I also read 25 Gifts of Terror by Boris Bacic, which is like one story per day, like an advent calendar. I don't know, like, some of the stories were good, some of them were not so good. It's a really good anthology, though. It's a single author collection, and yeah, some were hits, some were misses, but most were hits. I think for me, I enjoyed quite a lot of the Christmas concepts. I also had a listen to HorrorBabble's Diary Horror audiobook collection, which is narrated by Ian and Jennifer Gordon. It's a kind of found footage anthology containing 15 stories written in diary format. They are mostly classic fiction, classic weird fiction, but they do include more modern fiction, like Ian Gordon's 2020 audio tape diary story, which opens with. And I really enjoyed that. There are some good ones in there. I get on with that narration style quite well, and the voices work for me. It does include Lovecraft stories and Guy de Maupassant and, other people like that. Robert Bloch is in there. Lovecraft is going to Lovecraft, so brace for his stories. But yeah, it's a pretty good collection on the whole. Another single author collection that I read in December, or dipped into, is We Are Here to Hurt Each Other by Paula D. Ashe. I've interviewed Paula on this programme, so you can go and listen to her interview. You can also listen to the transcript or read the transcript on my blog. I really enjoy this collection, genuinely love it. It's a reread for me, and I think one of my favourite stories this time around was Jacqueline Laughs Last and the Gaslight. I didn't read all the stories, there are 12 of them in total, but I dipped in and out. It's brilliant. blurb at the back is, with these 12 stories, Paula D. Ashe takes you into a dark and bloody world where nothing is sacred and no one is safe. A landscape of urban decay and human degradation, this collection finds the psychic pressure points of us all and giddily squeezes. Try to run, try to hide, but there is no escape. We are here to hurt each other. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I think the prose is gorgeous. And if you're into, again, sort of that literary horror, but also body horror, give that collection a go. Another audiobook I listened to in December was the Algernon Blackwood BBC radio drama collection, 17 supernatural dramas and ghost stories, all by Algernon Blackwood. And the bouncy intro music and the credits were very incongruous compared to the stories, but I enjoyed it anyway. It's got a lot of good stories. Algernon Blackwood is just a great writer. I love his stuff. And if you're interested and you can't get hold of that, then the Internet Archive has 4 of his John Silence stories for free in audio format if you're interested. And also you can read them as sort of, I think Project Gutenberg has them as well, in PDF format or EPUB format. He's very worth reading. There's more to him than The Willows, although that is one of his most famous for a good reason. December, I was ill again quite a lot, so I ended up watching a lot of TV and a lot of mini-series, a lot of films. I watched Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss again. I watched Yaratilan, Creature again. I, again, absolutely can't recommend Creature enough as a Turkish version of Frankenstein. And if you know the book and you know different adaptations, it's so fun to see how they've adapted it for Ottoman Turkey. Absolutely great. So good. I watched La Révolution, which is the French 8-episode TV series from 2020, which got cancelled, so it ends on a cliffhanger. But it's like Kingdom meets Brotherhood of the Wolf, but it's revenants, I guess, not zombies, not vampires. I can't comment on the dub quality because I always watch it in the original language with subtitles. But, subtitles were fine and the acting was really good. It's about the future inventor of the guillotine who discovers a disease that's causing the aristocracy to murder commoners. It's so French. I loved it. I also then watched Queen Mantis, which is a Korean 8-part thriller heavy on domestic violence and child sexual abuse based on the French series L'Amante, which has the same reveal as that series because it's just the Korean version, but maybe tackles it a bit differently. I haven't really seen them both to compare. I doubt I will. I've done some inline spoilers for that. I'm not going to do the spoilers here, but there are some inline spoilers in my December media roundup for that particular TV show if you would like my full thoughts. I also watched one called Midwinter of the Spirit, which is a 3-part series, ITV UK mini-series from 2015. It's based on the second Merrily Watkins book by Phil Rickman, which was adapted for the screen by Stephen Voke, where crime meets ancient English folklore, with a rural vicar, Church of England vicar, protagonist called Merrily Watkins. I've got the first book. I bought it years and years ago. It's called The Wine of Angels. It's an absolute doorstop of a thing. And I bought it way back in the 2010s. I've had it through multiple house moves and various things on my shelf for the last 10 to 15 years. And now I might finally read it. And I said this in December. I still haven't read it. But you can just watch the ITV adaptation of book 2 without knowing Merrily Watkins' story. Like, you don't need to. It's like a standalone thing. But I think it's probably one of those that you get the character arcs if you read the books in order, but I don't think it really matters. Anyway, I quite like that adaptation. I really enjoyed that 3-parter. Midwinter of the Spirit, very good series. Then I got into a load of Agatha Christie because it was December and that's what you do in December coming up to Christmas. It's all about crime and ghosts. So, Ordeal by Innocence, 3-parter from 2018, an adaptation of Agatha Christie's standalone novel written by, adapted for the screen by Russell Lewis. I have to say, I do enjoy the decentering of the best known detective personalities like Poirot and Marple in these standalone adaptations. I really enjoyed And Then There Were None for that reason as well. That was just a great adaptation with the late great Sam Neill, R.I.P. And The Pale Horse, I also enjoyed that one. But the series, like, of Marple and Poirot sometimes do co-opt those standalone stories. So you may be familiar with Ordeal by Innocence as a Marple story because it was adapted in 2007 with Gwendoline McEwen as Marple, for that mystery series. And you may be familiar with The Pale Horse as a Marple mystery because the 2010 series with Julia Mackenzie as Miss Marple co-opted that story as a Marple mystery. But they're actually standalone stories. So this one, Ordeal by Innocence, the 2018 version, is detective-free, standalone, really tight focus on the family itself, like it's supposed to be in the novel, and just lets the characters breathe without a detective breathing down their necks. I also like that it is a lot darker than the Marple versions as a result. Deeply respect that. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's got a great cast, as you can imagine. That's quite a good one. Crooked House is the other one I watched, which is the miniseries from 2008. It was on Prime UK as a single 90-minute film, written by Mark Gatiss, directed by Damon Thomas, and the segments go through the grim history of Keep Manor with some nice touches, spooky atmospheric moments. I remember watching this, I think, in 2008 when it first came out, and so although this was a rewatch, I'd forgotten almost everything about it, so it was virtually new for me. But very hazy, but I did like that, and I would say that was enjoyable. The Pale Horse, which I've just mentioned, adapted by Sarah Phelps, that was a really good one. She did an outstanding job. And she also adapted And Then There Were None, which was the 2015 one that everybody loves. I think that's the Sam Neill one. And yeah, I recommend both of those. Again, Pale Horse, very good bleak dark version. Rufus Sewell is perfect as Mark Easterbrook, who is a really interesting choice as a protagonist for a novel, or for, like, you know, a crime. I really like his character a lot. He is an absolute shit. I really love him. I really love Sean Pertwee as Inspector Lejeune. It's about as close to folk horror as Christie gets, and she's always very, I don't know, quite sympathetic to folk tradition and to folk horror because it doesn't go the way you expect, and I love that. I also, of course, for a comfort watch, watched Ghosts, the UK version, just for some of the festive episodes and the last series, which I couldn't remember seeing. I probably didn't see it. And it just makes me cry buckets, it makes me laugh. And I absolutely loved Yonderland as well, by the same people. It's so weird to see Martha Howe Douglas, who plays Fanny in Ghosts, as like the modern chosen mum in modern clothes, was like a mum to twins who has to go and rescue this fantasy world by being like really quite mumsy towards them and being quite like ballsy as well, and having this life in her 40s outside of her husband and kids, and not being Fanny. I really liked it. Anyway, Ghosts, the UK version, recommend. I watched a ton of films that December. Oh my god, I watched all of the ghost stories for Christmas, and I mean literally as many of them as still exist that I could get my hands on. I got the DVD set for Christmas one year, so I watched them all. Like, yeah, I will go through. I'll go through those for you. But I also watched the current one as well. This, oh god, yeah, what a year. So I saw some really great films. The Christmas films that I watched, The Mean One, which is just daft. It's daft romance, it's The Grinch, it's brutal murders. It's one of those things like Blood and Honey, you know, like it's let's take this beloved children's character and make them into make it into a slasher. And it's silly and it's funny, and I was just like, whatever, yeah, okay. It gets me in the mood. I watched Krampus, 2015, directed by Michael Dougherty, which is another one that gets me into the Christmas spirit, I guess. I don't know, just there's bits about it I don't like, but there's also bits about it I find funny. But yeah, it's just one of those ones that I find myself watching. I also found an absolute gem, which I recommend to everyone. It's an entirely independently funded film. They made it on a micro budget of 28k in US dollars. It's called Izvod the Witch's Swamp. So this is directed by Oleg Taravkov and Alexei Platotnikov. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. It's a Slavic mythology-inspired folk horror. The English subs are really good, so I'd recommend it if you need English subtitles. I added it to Letterboxd myself because it wasn't on there. It's just a great indie folk horror if you want to have a look at it. I've actually posted a link to the YouTube with video which the directors have uploaded onto YouTube in my December roundup post, so you should go and check that out. It was great. A film that I really wanted to support because it's a Cambodian horror, and they don't make a lot of Cambodian horror, or they don't distribute it for a Western audience, and I think that's a shame. But it's not a great film at all. It's fine. Like, it's just not... I just didn't think it was that good. It's not one of the best quality that I've seen, but I do want to highlight it because Cambodian cinema needs more international love and support. It's called The Spell, 2019. And again, I've posted a link to the video for that in the post. I had a look at To All a Good Night, 1980 film directed by David Hess, because I was off work sick, desperately scrolling all the Christmas films of all genres I could find. Literally couldn't find anything I wanted to watch. And then I found the first time a killer in a Santa suit ever appeared on film, apparently. But that's about the only groundbreaking thing in it. It's very run-of-the-mill slasher, but it's a new to me Christmas one. I felt personally it was a bit too long, but that's probably because I have ADHD and I was ill. The action wasn't tight enough for me. Again, I was ill. I don't think I appreciated it as a film. I probably was in the wrong space of mind to watch it. But To All a Good Night, it's a classic for a reason. Just not for me at the time. Cinderella's Revenge, 2024, directed by Andy Edwards. I really liked his film Punch, which came out the previous year. And he also had one of my favourite songs, Cinderella Snapped by Jax, as his opening credits sequence. But then her chariot is an orange Tesla, and she's chauffeured by Elon Musk. Or like a lookalike, and I was like, what are we doing here? What is this, mate? What are you doing? I did like the innovation of getting famous designers from the modern day to design her dress, and the fairy godmother creates a portal for them to come through and just make her a really cool dress without it being just like, oh poof, there we go, it's magic. I did like that, and I did like the masked vengeance thing, but yeah. Not one that I would watch again, probably. I did enjoy the insanely gory Cinderella's Curse, also 2024, directed by Louisa Warren, though. So, of the two of them, I would recommend Louisa Warren's Cinderella's Curse over Cinderella's Revenge. That's just my personal thing, though. You might disagree. Check them both out. They're both indie films, and they could both do with a love. I did rewatch Jack Frost as well, obviously. The 1997 film. I was too tired and ill again to have fun with this, so it was a good background one. But yeah, definitely recommend that. Classic. Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. Oh my god, loved that one. I think that's directed by the same guy who directed Suzu and Suzu Road to Revenge, both of which are amazing action films, and I love them. And I think the guy who plays the main character in Sisu also is in Rare Exports, playing a very different character. So yeah, I feel weird about the ending of Rare Exports. It's very close to modern day slavery for me. Um, but yeah, Rare Exports is a good Christmas film, I guess. It's got quite a lot going for it. I also watched Mercy Christmas, which is a High Flyers film. High Flyers do a lot of hit and miss films. They distribute some really interesting indie stuff. And so when I see the High Flyers logo, I'm like, oh, let me get into the mindset of, let me lower my expectations a little bit. No, that's not fair. That's not fair. But like, I have to bear in mind, like, oh, okay, it's High Flyers. It's not going to be as polished sometimes, or like maybe as like a big box office production, because they're usually quite low budget films. Anyway, this there are some bangers, like really low budget bangers, like Cannibals versus Carpet Fitters. Absolutely brilliant. What was that? That was amazing. But I'm adding Mercy Christmas to the list of hits. It does fall back on lazy writing at some points. They didn't need to kill off the only black character in the film. They just did that because they wanted a final guy, I guess. But that seemed a bit unnecessary to me. So yeah, stuff like that is what I'm talking about. The sort of lazy horror tropes, I suppose. I'd give it, I don't know, like 3.5 stars, 3 stars overall, maybe. Fun, casual cannibalism, I suppose I would describe that as. But that's the hit territory of what High Flyers produces. Just to give you an idea. Yeah. I also watched some classics like Nightmare Castle, 1965, which is an Italian Gothic horror that leans into the full drive your wife mad on purpose territory. It's got frog serum mixed with the blood of a young woman that changes an old scheming housekeeper young again, a mad scientist count with a laboratory in his castle, and it's got Barbara Steele playing, from what I could gather, identical stepsisters. But let's not dwell on details or bother our little heads with pesky questions. I love watching Gothic films in winter for the atmosphere. The dafter the better. This is daft. This is on YouTube. It's great. It's a really good Italian Gothic example of the genre. I also watched She-Wolf of London, 1946, which is directed by Jean Yarborough. A psychological horror in which we have a family curse, a woman who kills men at night in a park, thinking that she's a wolf, but it's 1940s, so not a wolf, but psychological. Very solid universal film. I really love June Lockhart's performance in this. It's one I listed in my Werewolf Films of 1910 to 1949 post, which is also on my website. There's a lot of British class dynamics going on here, which I always enjoy. Really enjoyed this. And you can see from films like this one, and obviously Gaslight, 1944, where the later 1960s Gothic films got a lot of their ideas and style and that kind of thing from. And also, She-Wolf of London, what a great evil monologue. There's always an evil monologue. This one, banger. This is what you get when there's no man in the house. Just a lot of evil old women. No, I jest. I can also see, for someone who saw this and Gaslight at the pictures and then saw a 1960s Gothic, would be like, oh, they don't make him like they used to. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can see the differences in them and why someone who would prefer She-Wolf of London and Gaslight would not get on with the 1960s stuff. I like both personally, but yeah, it was just a really interesting watch experience, I guess. I did also see Gaslight, because after the psychological manipulation of She-Wolf of London, I felt like I wanted to see the seminal film in psychological horror, if we can call it that, from which the subgenre really took off on screen. Obviously, it's adapted from a play. They've been doing this in the theatre for years. But I think that's right. From what I've read, this is like where cinema kind of went, oh, psychological horror. That's really good. This is, and then we get this explosion of like thrillers and things like that. I can't remember if I've seen this one or not, so I don't know if it was a rewatch or if I just couldn't remember seeing it. So I counted it as a first watch at the time. Again, it's based on Patrick Hamilton's thriller play of the same name, first produced in 1935, which I'd really like to see one day. I think I'd really love to see how that gets staged. And I watched the colorized version, which, usually it's in black and white, but there is a colorized version available on YouTube. I also saw The Phantom Light, 1935, which is based on Australian-British writer Evadne Price's novel, adapted for the stage by Evadne Price and Joan Roy Byfield, and then it was turned into a film and directed by Michael Powell. It's actually a crime thriller, not a ghost story, but it is kind of framed as a ghost story, but there are no ghosts. It's just sort of, superstition, It's also pretty short. It's about 75 minutes runtime, so you shouldn't expect too much plot or character development. It's just atmosphere and nuts and bolts mystery and mildly spooky trimmings and some nice monologue and dialogue moments. It's set in Wales, falls back on the usual stereotypes with old women in steeple hats and shawls who can't or won't speak English, but they also don't speak Welsh either. Like, I'm not actually sure what she said in the beginning. I got North Star, which means good night, which she said in the middle of the day. And it's got singing fishermen and superstitious, dangerous or weak-minded locals. So tick, tick, tick on the stereotypes. Pretty typical of how Cymru and her people are usually portrayed in media that want to use it as an otherworldly, gothic or uncivilized setting. I guess see also House of the Long Shadows, The Dark Old House. And even today, my major disappointment with any book that I've ever read in recent years was Tea Kingfishers, The Twisted Ones, where you don't need to use lazy jokes about the Welsh language to make your main character sound snarky and fun. Fuck off. That, I don't care. I don't care. That really pissed me off. And also, it doesn't just happen once, it's multiple times where the MC is like talking in a very dismissive and mocking way about Cymraeg and the usual lazy jokes about vowels and God knows what. And I was just like, it is the 21st century, bitch. My God, are we still doing this? Like, come on now. Anyway, annoying. Otherwise, which is a shame because The Twisted Ones is an interesting novel. The creepiest parts of it are very, very creepy and worth reading. But the diary, just so you know when you go in, is verbatim taken from Arthur Machen's book, The White People. And the diary entry is just Arthur Machen's story, which is told in diary format, put into the book. So she didn't make any of that up. That is literally just the diary entries. That's literally all Arthur Machen. And then you've got her commentary over the top of that. And so it's really interesting. I really like that, actually. I don't mind that. But I know somebody went in and then was really disappointed because they preferred the diary entry parts, thought those were brilliant, and then realised that that wasn't T. Kingfisher's writing at all. And so it was like, oh, and it kind of like negatively affected their experience of the book. I don't think it should. I thought that was, like a really interesting way of using somebody else's story to weave it into like an interesting retelling and do something with it. But anyway, I digress. I did not read The Twisted Ones in December, so I don't know why I'm going off on a tangent about that. Anyway, What else did I see in December? Wake Up Dead Man, the third in Ryan Johnson's Knives Out kind of trilogy. Or are we calling it that? Or are we calling it the Blanc trilogy? Yeah, anyway, I really enjoyed it. I liked the way it looked at religious cults of personality, how they operate in the US Catholic Church and intersect with US conservatism. I found that really interesting. I love the other two as well, and I do like how these films tend to punch up, not down. I like the dynamic of Blanc and Father Judd. I enjoyed the way it was played, more as complementary differences than an antagonistic contrast. That worked for me, I like that. I love a locked room mystery. Loved that. The cast, the twists and turns, the use of sunlight in this one to light characters' faces when they reveal truths, or when something's happening inside them and then people are cast in shadow when the truth is being obscured or nefarious things are afoot. And I thought that's a very blunt instrument way to use lighting, but it also was kind of nice. Like, I thought that was fun. I liked that. Oh, yes, I watched my favourite Cinderella, which is not a slasher. You would be amazed to know it is, in fact, Three Wishes for Cinderella. There is a 70s version, which I also like, but my favourite is the 2021, which is directed by Cecily A. Mosley. This is a lovely winter rewatch. I watch it all the time, especially when I'm ill. This one is just so nice, so aesthetic. I love the Northern Lights. It fills in some gaps that the 1970s one has. It also does not go with the fat lady as comic relief trope in The Ball, which is quite nice. It gives us a cute gay romance subplot, and it gives us an older couple's romance in the distant background, and I think, overall, it's the one I prefer. Definitely a good one for when I'm unwell, which is basically November, December, January, So, yeah, I love that. I also then watched La Belle et la Bête, the 2014 Beauty and the Beast, directed by Christophe Gans. Yeah, his films are a bit hit and miss for me as well, but I really love this one. It's a French fantasy version with a framed narrative, a lot of family background you don't normally get that's in the original story. It follows and expands on Cocteau's version in that way, which I really like. It's one of my top 3 versions, actually. Pana Netfor, the Czech version, is my top one. And then I think Fanga, or Bell, which is set in Iceland, very low budget, where the beast is a cannibal and just a hairy guy. Yeah, I love those. And this is the third one, or second, I don't know. And I just wanted it for the merchant family subplot and their dynamics. There's not a lot of, you don't get that, it's French, so you don't get the kind of like overt, oh, she's falling in love with him story. You have to do that, you have to guess that from her expressions rather than what she's saying or the chemistry between them. She basically falls in love with him by dreaming about him as a man and the way and his love story with his wife. So she sees him and his wife together and she's like, oh my god, what a great guy. I don't know. And he's a dick. I don't really understand. Like, anyway. And then there's a lot of like interiority happening just by the camera looking at her face and I don't know. They nearly kiss on an ice lake before the ice breaks underneath them when he's a beast. It's an interesting one. What else did I watch? Black Christmas, 1974, directed by Bob Clark. That hasn't been available to stream in the UK for ages. So I was really pleased that I finally found it. It's a Canadian film. I thought for the longest time it was a US film. Apologies, Canada. But that's because I saw the US remake version first, which is 2019, directed by Sophia Takal. And I get what she was trying to do, but I think I prefer this original version. The remake is very heavy-handed about what it's trying to say in the way that a lot of US-made stuff is. And I know why. I get that everyone's very heavy-handed because everyone is afraid that the message is lost, the audience don't get it, and in fact a lot of the time the audience does not get it. But you know what? That I feel like that's often to the detriment of the film. That's just my personal feeling. I'm British, I prefer subtlety. I don't know what to say. But also British audiences are not great at getting things. I think media literacy is on the out everywhere, to be honest. Anyway, there are some genuinely good creepy moments in the original. I found genuinely unsettling, and it's got that weird 70s vibe that I enjoy. And I think the central premise translates really well, to modern day, and is aged pretty well as well. So yeah, I really liked that, and I think I prefer Black Christmas 1974 over Black Christmas 2019. But that's just my personal opinion. And then Ghost Stories for Christmas. Oh my god, they are so good, guys. I really hope that you get to experience them. I've got the box set, which is 1968 to 2010, and that's produced by the British Film Institute. So on that, I'll just give you a quick rundown. There's Whistle and I'll Come to You, 1968, with an introduction by Ramsey Campbell, who is one of my favourite authors. Then there's the Whistle and I'll Come to You remake in 2010, which stars John Hurt, and I also really enjoyed that, and I remember watching that when that came out on telly. There's also an audio version of A Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad by Emma James, read by Neil Brand, which I also quite enjoyed. And listening to it, I realised how funny the original story is, and also how homoerotic it is. Recommend it. Please read. Ramsey Campbell also reads his M.R. James inspired story, The Guide, which I found quite fun. There's also then The Stalls of Barchester, 1971, directed by Lawrence Gordon Clark, who ended up as my most watched director of 2025, just because of all of these bloody little short stories that he directed. A Warning to the Curious, Lawrence Gordon Clark, 1972, they all have introductions by the director in the box set, which is quite interesting. Then Ghost Stories for Christmas with Christopher Lee, directed by Eleanor Yule, which had 2 out of the 4 segments where he does dramatic staged readings of The Stalls of Barchester Cathedral and A Warning to the Curious by M.R. James, and he plays M.R. James and tells the stories to a gathering of his students at Cambridge. So I then tracked down the other 2 of the 4 segments, which are available, I think, on YouTube, and watched those as well. And Christopher Lee is fantastic, and he's just monologuing, and it's so captivating. I loved that. There's Lost Hearts, which Lawrence Gordon Clark did an adaptation of, The Treasure of Abbot Thomas, The Ash Tree, The Signalman, which is the Charles Dickens short story, Stigma, which is 1977, and that was one of the first ones where it was an original story that they did. It's the one... Stigma is the one about where they try and remove a monolith from a garden, and then she gets possessed by some sort of spirit and starts spontaneously bleeding. Weird story. The Ice House is another original story. A View from a Hill, directed by Luke Watson. That was one of the revived ones. That was 2005. So The Ice House was 1978, and I think that was the last one that they did in that series, and then revived it in 2000. So A View from a Hill, and then Number 13, which was the following year, 2006. That's another M.R. James story. I quite like that one. And Christopher Lee also does the one of the other segments Christopher Lee does is Number 13, so you can watch him monologue that and deliver that story as a monologue, and it really works because a lot of M.R. James's stories are in the first person, so you don't have to do a lot of adaptation. You just kind of like let him almost like read it verbatim, but like deliver it as if he's delivering a speech. So good. Yeah. Then I watched a few of the classic ghost stories from 1986, which is 5 episodes where the actor Robert Powell performs dramatic readings of the M.R. James tales, The Mezzotint, The Ash Tree, The Rose Garden, Wailing Well, and of course, A Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. Very similar premise to the Christopher Lee version, but you're just watching Robert Powell do it instead of Christopher Lee. Spine Chillers, the 1980s series episodes, directed by Marilyn Fox. Only 3 stories from the series are on the box set. They are the 3 M.R. James stories. The Mezzotint, which is adapted into like 11 minutes. A School Story, 11 minutes. And The Diary of Mr. Pointer, which is 11 minutes. So obviously it's not the full thing, it's like abridged. But all the remaining Spine Chillers episodes can be found on the Internet Archive. And that was the DVD box set. And so after that, I was like, no, I want some more of this. So I went and found the Mark Gatiss ones and some others. So Woman of Stone, which is an adaptation of Edith Nesbit's story, Man Size in Marble. Count Magnus, I love that story, so I was really pleased that it had been adapted. And actually, Lawrence Gordon Clark had a script for that all ready to go, but couldn't film it due to a lack of budget, so it never got made in the original series. And I wasn't disappointed, honestly, with Mark Gatiss's adaptation. I think it works well. I did wonder about he always shows the monster, and it's always a little bit silly, but okay, you have to just be prepared for that. The Tractate Midoth, 2013. Not one of the stories that I've actually read by M.R. James, but I liked the casting and the atmosphere. It's another sinister treasure hunt or puzzle mixed up in supernatural stalker shenanigans. A bit of a variation on a Jamesian theme. It's a good variation, and I enjoyed the adaptation. The Dead Room, directed by Mark Gatiss, with Simon Callow playing the actor Aubrey in a haunted recording studio, which is a Haunted by the Past original story by Gatiss, playing around with ghosts and memories and auditory hallucinations. And, it worked for me. It got at the sexual repression I think you can find in James's work if you're looking for it. I liked it, not one of my favourites. Martin's Close, 2019, was another M.R. James adaptation. Again, Mark Gatiss adaptation. Not a straight period piece. It's a slightly different type of one. You get a narrator for the frame narrative, which is Simon Williams playing Stanton, who narrates this historical tale directly to the camera as a voiceover, which is kind of a blend of the Robert Powell or Michael Bryant in Spine Chillers style narrations with cutaways to the historical trial. I think that worked quite well. It worked for me. Peter Capaldi does a great job of the attorney role. And I think I liked the way that Anne Clark was played sympathetically as an autistic girl. And I haven't read this one either, but I hope that she's not comic relief or written as an oddity in the original story. I don't know. But yeah, that's one that I would kind of be wary of reading, I suppose. The Mezzotint, the actual adaptation, because I'd heard 2 versions of this story now. Robert Powell's narration and the Spine Chillers episode with Michael Bryant. And so I was really happy to see it adapted, and I thought it was really interesting because it moved the original story to 1923. So the original story was published in 1904 and set kind of before that. So the 1920s gave it more of a Christie vibe, like an Agatha Christie Golden Age detective feel. It's a genuinely creepy story, one of my favourites, and I also liked that having seen Robert Powell's Mezzotint prop, you can compare it with the actual Mezzotint they use in the adaptation. I did also like the choice to gender swap the servant character, because there's only male characters in the story, so having the servant character as a woman was like, oh good, it's not just 4 blokes in a room, like we've got a bit of diversity to look at, that makes it a bit more interesting. I also enjoyed the choice to link the Mezzotint mystery to the mysterious family history of our main character, which was an innovation of Gatiss's, and I do get what they were going for with the ending, but I'm kind of wishing they didn't show us so much. Again, he always shows the monster and it spoils it. Stop it. I also saw A Christmas Carol, a ghost story, which is the televised version of the stage play of Charles Dickens's classic. And that was directed by Adam Penford. It's a pretty funny version. It's also pretty chilling. I love the staging of the ghosts, and the 3 spirits were really good. Made me cry in parts. I Oh, I remember being absolutely terrified of the Ghost of Christmas Future in the Muppets version as a child. And this version didn't disappoint. I loved the use of puppets, the staging was great. I actually think this might be one of my favourite versions of the story. And I also appreciated that they cast an ambulatory wheelchair user as Tiny Tim. And it was just really good to see a disabled actor in that role. Yeah, so I recommend that one. Then I saw The Wolf of Snow Hollow. Not very memorable for me, unfortunately. It's meant to be like a werewolf comedy, horror comedy. It's not the kind of humour that I vibe with, though, so it didn't really land. It was fine, pulled together at the end. There were some elements I appreciated. If you want a horror comedy werewolf police procedural film in the snow, sure, go for it. The Death of Snow White, 2025, directed by Jason Brooks. I love these gory updates of classic tales. They are my guilty pleasure. This one was full on cheap body horror all the way through. Like, how much body horror can we get on camera for £1.50? The pursuit of beauty is accompanied with horrific experimentations. Everyone is in Ren Fair costumes they probably bought themselves. The Queen is outstanding. The eyelash sewing is great. Very ugly stepsister. There's teeth replacements, there's leeches, there's blood magic, there's hacking up of peasant girls. It's pretty good. I found it funny. It had some amazing moments. There's naked mirror demons. There's nothing not to like, really. If you appreciate the fact it's on a low budget, I really enjoyed it. It's worth a watch. The Vampire Lovers, 1970, directed by Roy Ward Barker. Somehow, the only one of the Karnstein trilogy I thought I hadn't seen. And I was like, how have I not seen this? I've seen Twins of Evil, I've seen Lust for a Vampire several times each. And then this is the one that actually tried to base the plot on Le Fanu's Carmilla. It's got a lot of familiar faces in the cast. It's got some gorgeous dresses. I actually remember a lot of the scenes, but not the whole film. So it turns out I have seen it before. But ADHD, I guess. Anyway, a good one. I would recommend that trilogy. It's quite an interesting one to watch. It's very fun. Peter Cushing's great. And then I saw a modern film called Pale Horse 2024, not to be confused with Agatha Christie's story. Pale Horse, it's an interesting one. It's trying to be a modern Gothic romantic thing. It's got a beautiful man with his shirt off, and he's painting. Painting's his life, and he's an artist, And there's a lovely she-demon, and he's sold his soul to make art. Not just art, but art. It's got a good premise. It looks good. The sound mixing is atrocious. That really let it down. It feels like a less erotic version of it could be a YA dark romance bestseller, to be honest. But also, if it had just committed in like a Panos Cosmatos kind of way and went full on Mandy with the visuals, it could have been 80% better. It just didn't quite commit with what it was trying to do, I felt. I liked the ending, though. It was a bit weak in execution, but I do like a tragic failure. So, Pale Horse, it was alright. I also then saw The Traveller, a Christmas Eve thriller with Val Kilmer, slaying in every sense. If Die Hard is a Christmas film, it is. Then so is this one. And I've seen Die Hard so many times, I just fancied another gory thriller set at Christmas to mix things up a bit. The ending of this one, The Traveller, is a bit of a letdown. It's incredibly American, by which I mean it... I don't know how to explain this. It very much embodies the ideology of a very specific American demographic. And because it does that, it ruins the whole film. Because it doesn't work with everything else. Because I think the director and the writers just did not think it through at all. No, I'm going to have to... okay, I'm going to spoil it now. So if you haven't seen The Traveller, pause, skip, whatever. So the idea is that this guy turns up, and he is kind of like the supernatural embodiment of a drifter who was tortured and murdered for killing, suspected of killing the cop's daughter. And so instead of arresting him, they just like tortured him in the cell, and then they killed him by accident, sort of thing. Or it wasn't really accidental, but yeah. And the whole film is about them going, oh my God, we tortured and horribly killed this man. He's now coming after all of us. He knows it's one by one being picked off because we're corrupt. But it turns out that he did actually kill the main cop's daughter. And so the extrajudicial torture and murder is justified because they were right. And he is actually evil, and the little girl comes back as a ghost to reveal the drifter's name. Very much like Rumpelstiltskin, who was also after children in the fairy tale. And knowing his name enables the cop to break his power and shoot him with his gun, because this is America. And if you shoot a supernatural, all-powerful demon ghost with a gun, obviously that's going to work. Okay. But the interesting point is the cop at one point is outside, and he's got two doors that he can go through, and one is the hard 8 bar with dice on the sign, and the other one next to it is a door that's in shadow and has a red neon sign saying Jesus Saves above it. And he doesn't go through the Jesus Saves door, he runs into the bar. So you can read this as a complete rejection of Jesus and religious morals and Christian ethics. But he's saved anyway because cop ethics, or being a cop who is justified in his heinous actions, actually trumps being Christian and trumps Christian ethics. So the cop card trumps the Jesus Saves card, right? And because he's saved by the ghost of his innocent little daughter, not by Jesus, that centres his position as father, with a capital F, in US family life, I guess, over and above actual ethics and morality. So he can get away with anything, because as long as it's justified in sort of protecting his family, it doesn't matter that he's rejecting Christian ethics. It doesn't matter that he's actually rejecting Jesus. It doesn't matter that he has brutally murdered a man he did not know was guilty or innocent. None of that matters, because his little girl came back as a ghost and told him he was right, and that allowed him to shoot a ghost with a fucking gun. And this film seems to subscribe to the idea that a man in a position of power can do anything and get away with it if he A, can justify it to himself, and B, he's doing it for his kid, who then supernaturally rewards him for it as a seal of approval. There is no coherent belief system in this film, of course. It's not thought through. It's not even about that. But I think what it does do is portray the unexamined cognitive dissonance and central shallow thinking about ethics that the writer has and the director has, while pandering to who they assume their potential audience demographic is. And that is in itself just fascinating to me. So it's a total mess, because the ending really messes it up. The film doesn't actually present a coherent belief system. It plays with conflicting elements and vibes. And because the drifter turns out to actually be evil, this is played as some sort of redemption arc for that cop. But he's not saved by grace or anything remotely Christian. He's saved by the grace of his dead kid, not Jesus, who has been explicitly rejected by going through the bar door and not the door that says Jesus saves above it, right? So it's a deeply secular, redeemed by family message, whether that's intentional or not. And I think that's just really interesting, because it's a warning, and I say this all the time about world building and stuff. If you're not engaging with actual ethics, actual morality, actual logic of the world that you've created, that usually results in these sorts of internally incoherent ideas, because it's just very telling about your cultural norms and assumptions and your internal bias and your unexamined biases when this happens. Because if you don't think about what you're actually saying, and you don't think about certain things in your world building, and you have these sort of gaps of things that you have not thought about, You just fall back onto your own automatic set of cultural norms by default. And when you do that, and you take a step back, you may find they don't make any sense in the context of the story that you're telling. But they do tell the reader or the viewer an awful lot about you and what you subconsciously or unconsciously or whatever, or even consciously think about certain things. And I find that fascinating. But it ruined the film. And I deeply regretted that we didn't get a decent kill for the detective at the end. But apart from that, Val Kilmer, best thing in this film, worth a watch, the super close-ups of his face and little smirks. Anyway. And then the very last thing I watched was obviously A Ghost Story for Christmas, The Room in the Tower, 2025, Mark Gatiss. Genuinely good, I thought. An E.F. Benson story. We don't get a lot of those adapted. The Room in the Tower is, of course, a 1912 story which came out before the Great War and before World War II, but this adaptation was set during the Blitz in the 1940s, which enabled a few tweaks to be made to the original. And I really liked the addition of a frame narrative and the tension of the bombing above them and all that kind of thing. I thought, framing it in the sense of the wars was really good. I also liked the ending. E.F. Benson's story shows us the vampiric ghoul as well. And neither the original nor the adaptation explains why the main character is the focus of these dreams and apparitions. So, fine, that's quite true to the story. And I'll be honest, the original story doesn't do much for me as a story, but the adaptation really worked to creep me out, so congrats. I know a lot of people don't like Mark Gatiss's adaptations. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with them, and I agree to an extent. I do think he shows us too much. But I don't mind them. I enjoy them for what they are. They're just light entertainment that you watch Christmas Eve for fun. I'm not here to be massively scared or hiding behind my sofa. I just want to watch something with like a nice atmosphere to it. And yeah, it's a reasonable adaptation of The Room in the Tower, I thought. And I'm not a purist, so it doesn't ruin a story for me if the adaptation does things that is not in the original story, or it moves time frames, and I know that really annoys some people, but I'm saying it from the perspective of myself, and I don't care. So there we go. That's everything that I watched, read and listened to November and December, and that's quite enough, I think. A lot of it was horror. I was hoping that it wouldn't be. But yeah, it turns out that I watch a lot of horror all year round. But there we go. Maybe there's something in there for you. Maybe there's something in there that you would like to put on your 100 horror films challenge list, if I've mentioned anything that you thought was interesting. And maybe there are some books that you want to pick up. Maybe there are some shows that you fancy watching. Anyway, yeah, we'll be back next time for more horror films, and I'll do another bonus episode with media roundups from previous months. Bye for now.